You need to move yourself away from any kind of tool dependence at all. Minimize it. So if you can say, like, if it might be true that you need a writing utensil of some form and something to write on.
Man, you got blood.
So, yeah, exactly.
All you need is something sharp.
You need something sharp
And a wall.
Or you got teeth. You can just, you're fine.
Go for it.
You got blood in the wall.
Butterscotch shenanigans.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 93 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the gains programmer.
I'm Adam, and I don't type with Dvorak.
I'm Sam, and I use a mouse to do art.
And today is Aprilivent 2017.
Today we celebrate Perlin Noise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also have a warning before we get started. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity. We're going to talk about stuff. If you're a child or if you just don't like hearing about things, then stop listening and go away.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first up, we got news for this week. We got a bunch of tidbits and riffraff going on. So first off, jam games. We got them. We made them.
You want them.
And then we forgot about them and left them in Dropbox for years.
We lost some of them probably.
And we lost a whole bunch of them. Okay. So we just realized we have all these jam games lying around.
Yeah.
Maybe we should let people actually play them.
Well, there's an interesting thing here, which is that, you know, as you're producing games or if you're writing, really, if you're doing anything, you sort of produce these byproducts from, you know,
Prototypes,
prototypes,
sketches, garbage.
And people are interested in those, but it's not the sort of thing that you want to necessarily spend a lot of time, you know, putting together.
Because they're not
dealing with.
polished.
They're not products.
Yeah, it's
They're
more
not,
just
they're not meant for consumption.
Yeah,
You know, they're
it's kind of just like fun behind the scenes stuff. So we finally I can't remember exactly why, but we were looking at our jams and prototypes folder, and it's just full of stuff.
Yeah.
And we've always had requests for the jam games we produce for people to actually be able to play them.
we're always just like, nah.
Yeah. So finally we were like, okay, you know, we have enough. I guess we'll put them
Well,
up
but
somewhere.
there's a problem of distribution and maintenance.
Yep.
Right. Because, you know, if we want to put them up on Google Play or iTunes or something like that, every time an iTunes update comes out, well, shit, now we got to go and patch like 30 jam games.
Which
No,
will
thank
not
you.
make any money ever.
Yeah, we don't plan on selling them. We don't want to sell them. We don't want to put ads in them. We don't want to put IAPs in them. We just made them for
They're
fun
not
or whatever.
products. They're prototypes.
They're not products, yeah. And so the question was always, well, how do we get these out into the world without also creating a whole shitload of work for ourselves? And now we have the answer.
Itch.io.
Yeah.
So sometime soon, in the next week or two, we'll be launching, or I guess kind of relaunching our itch page, which will just be hosting all of our jam games from here on out.
So far, we have 2 jam games on it.
Betty the
From the
Eddie's up
most
there.
recent 2 jams.
Yeah, Betty the Eddie and Do You Even Lift, I think, are up there.
Yes.
Our birding game, which we have talked about but haven't shown anyone from Global Game Jam, will be inside of our next game. So you don't get to play that one.
Yeah.
But all the rest of them, including Goopidemic, Shucks, I crashed my spaceship and now I have to blow up heads until I find all my space parts and can leave.
Yep, that's a classic.
Is I Can't See Shit
I
in
Can't
there?
See Shit is
That's
in
a
there,
good
which
one.
is a blind platformer.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these games were either built in spans of either 8 hours, 10 hours, or 48 hours. So
And most of them we never released published or playable versions anywhere.
Correct.
So we made YouTube videos of them, which you can see some of these on our YouTube channel. But that's it.
So if you're a fan of the stuff we do, but you've always kind of been wanting to see a few of maybe the more ugly projects that we put together, I think it's important to know.
Yeah,
'cause
you've seen our good stuff.
you've seen our good stuff.
Now check out our shitty
Check out
stuff.
our bad side.
How are we branding this? Because we wouldn't want to mix, if we ever decide to release something professional on Itch, we wouldn't probably want to mix that with all of our.
We would never release
prototypes.
something professional on Itch.
Fair.
That's the
Yeah.
answer. Yep.
Got
Done. So Itch is the home of all of our prototypes and jams. And soon, hopefully next week, you'll be able to see all those up there, pull them all down, and get quite a bit of playtime actually between, I think, like 12. How many are on there?
There's going to be a good
It's
number.
an unreal
Yeah.
number. And it goes all the
So-
way back to Chauncey the Rabbit, which
Yeah,
we're
that's
putting
right.
back up.
And that
in a
Oh
PC
actually-
version.
shit, we got to get
was
Towel
available.
Fight of the Gods on there too.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually made before Butterscotch Shenanigans existed, by
Yeah.
like 6 months actually.
Yeah.
Do we still have that?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
still a download link on the original site.
That was the first game that Sam and I made as a 2-person team just ever.
It is the origins of the Butterscotch.
It is.
And it's also the prequel to Towel Fight 2, The Monocle of Destiny.
Got a lot of lore tidbits in there. Pete's
I
in there.
think the most remarkable thing about these games is just seeing the game by game. So I went back through and so Sam did all the descriptions for all the games. Then I went back through and I also added to the description when they were made.
Oh yeah.
So you can kind of see.
Can they be listed in order of when they were made?
Probably if we put a date in the title or something.
Yeah, 'cause that would
then that
sort
would be
by date.
kind of weird. But
yeah, that's true.
But I mean, it already is weird because it's a bunch
it
of
already is.
prototypes,
It's
right?
a bunch of garbage.
It might
but-
actually make a lot of sense to,
Kind of a
to
fun
sort of
history.
do it by date.
Yeah, because seeing the games chronologically, you know, you'll see something like Chauncey the Rabbit, and you're like, what the fuck? Like this isn't a Butterscotch game because like it doesn't quite look like one, and it like doesn't feel very good to play it.
It kind of
And
sucks.
you can see like it's got vibrant colors and stuff. But it just most of it just like we had
Is sloth cycling up there?
It will be.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have to rebuild it, don't we? Or like,
Yeah,
have
we
to
got
build a new.
we got a
executable
few. We got a few things. We may have to do like sort of a weekend game jam
jam date
where
Jam
we
update.
just
Jam.
get everything put together.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean that's gonna be super exciting.
I think the reason it's so exciting is you very rarely actually get to see the trajectory of either a studio or a particular artist you like or band. Like I mean, how many bands have released, after being super popular for a long time, say, "Oh yeah, come listen to our old shitty songs that we wrote before anybody
But
knew."
of course,
about
also who would want to?
Yeah,
normally,
but
right?
I think
But
it's
that's
just
for
an
the-
I think if you're
yeah.
a fan, you just want to hear it just like once,
Right.
Just
Yeah.
be like, oh, this is what they used
It's
to
to
sound.
I think
understand
also
where it comes
if
from.
you have aspirations, right?
Yeah.
Then that I think is a great thing because it levels the idea of how you get to a particular place down to saying, okay, clearly it just takes a good amount of
Just
work
takes time.
over a long period of time, and you make garbage in the beginning.
And it also provides some benchmarks, right? Because
Yeah.
you can then kind of see the work that you're doing and compare that on some public trajectory and ask kind of where do I fall in here?
Right.
How long did it take to get to the next phase? And like am I putting in the work required? Because the reason that we started with shit and now can make some decent stuff is
Time.
because we've spent enormous amounts of time on it, right? Which means that somebody else can go do this. Well, time and thought. It was careful
Yeah.
time, not just time.
Yeah,
Careful
you don't just
spend time on it.
yeah,
But
you
that
don't
means
just
that,
wave your hand around on a canvas for 15,000 hours and suddenly you're an artist.
Right.
You got to think about it.
exactly you got to step back and think. And so that means that we've basically provided, not necessarily the best or the worst or whatever. We've just provided a benchmark for how
We provide
fast
probably the
it can take-
mediumist benchmark.
Perhaps. Who knows? Nobody else has done it as far
Yeah.
as we know.
Right. So I think it's fun. But yeah, so those will be up next week or so, and
We'll,
then
we'll probably do a blurg post.
we'll announce
something.
something. Something.
Yeah. And also, speaking of overhauling various pages,
Yeah.
we're also going to be overhauling our YouTube channel.
We got some serious brand management.
Yeah, we realized
Objectives.
what's going on with our YouTube channel. We don't know.
We don't even know.
Well,
It's-
just in general, our all of our stuff is this kind of random collection of things that we thought were interesting, right? So like the blog is mostly just posts about our podcast, right? But then in the past was a
Our
random
podcast is
smattering
mostly
of-
about the blog.
Yeah,
You know.
right. And there was like a smattering of marketing materials and critiques of the industry stuff. When it was just random interesting stuff. There was no sort of coherent theme. And our YouTube channel is the worst, I guess. Historically, we have stuff,
Developer.
There's
chats.
just random stuff up there, and some of it is of very low quality. Some of it is actually okay,
And we have our trailers.
And we've got our trailers up there, and so it's just a random mix of stuff. And so we were like, we should probably make things coherent.
Yeah. So we're doing that. We'll have more information about that. But I think the important thing is we also realized that our podcast kind of suffers from discoverability problems. It's available on, iTunes and Stitcher
Well,
and
everywhere quality podcasts. are
everywhere you can find podcasts, but that means you got to be looking for a
Podcasts.
podcast to find it. And so
and you have to be looking for ours specifically because podcasts have completely useless search functions. There's like
Yeah.
no way to find a podcast on accident. It has to either be featured or somebody has to tell you about it.
Yep. Featured on a specific popular podcast app or something like that. So we realized if we want people to sort of accidentally find the podcast, how do we do? The answer is YouTube.
Put videos up with the podcast.
Yeah. So Adam and I spent some time, and Sam joined in as well. We spent some time this weekend doing a pod jam where we took our painting that was it's on our podcast cover.
box art.
Our podcast box art. And I broke it apart into layers and then did sort of like a 3D.
It feels like a
visual effect.
diorama now.
Yep. And then Sam did some Inkscape work of sort of adding extra lighting, and he redid the background so we could break it apart even more. And then so we just had this kind of cool slow motion moving image of our podcast box art with an actual like fire with smoke coming off and stuff.
It looks real cool.
It looks real cool. It's very chill. And then so we turned that into an hour 40-minute video. And then Adam is working on a robot that's going to automatically take our podcast episodes, pull them down, merge the video with the audio, and auto upload it to our YouTube channel. So that way, all of our podcast episodes will be findable on YouTube with a super dope, chill as fuck video. And you can just sit there and be like, yeah, it's like I'm just, like you're sitting there, like I'm there at the campfire.
Right.
Yeah. So we got that. We got that in the works. We have some pretty cool stuff coming down the pipe.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we know when? Because I still have to fix. I got everything done on my side except for this YouTube upload, which we're not going to talk about it, but was a surprising pain in the ass. But so the question is, once it's all ready to go, which will be soon, when are we going to start actually doing this?
Just whenever.
Just as soon as we're ready.
As soon as we,
Right.
as soon as possible.
Weeks. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, this is a great thing about building robots is once you make them and they just start doing stuff and then you don't have to.
Well, and we had been debating about how to actually launch it because we have a backlog now, as you listeners know, of 90. Is this the 93?
This is 93.
This is 93. So
And,
a backlog.
and, we're not uploading these manually.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But once we have the robot, we can upload them all actually.
Yeah.
But the question is, should we? Because that's suddenly an entire bolus.
I went back and I listened to the first couple, just kind of like skipped through just to kind of scope it out. And I feel like our podcasting chops have improved
I'm sure that's true.
in the sense.
Well, we probably don't want all of them. The question is, do we go back to maybe it's like 25 or something, which is about when we got this set up, or 30, maybe something like that. Our professional setup, and then we just upload 60 fucking episodes
In one go.
or yes, that
We go. I
don't
would
know.
say we could probably do the ones around the time that Crashlands launched, probably because that's probably when we had
interest.
we were probably 20 something episodes in. We had a pretty good feel for doing the stuff. We had figured out our equipment more, and there was actually a lot of crazy things happening at that time. So, so we'll have some again. We'll have a blurg pierced.
So we could. So maybe we'll upload. Basically, we'll start wherever we think they're good.
Yeah.
Upload literally all of them, and then set them all like 60 or whatever that is to public.
Yeah.
And then from then on, every week we'll just automatically have the next one added.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how would you do it? That'll be
Sure.
That'll be
Yeah.
something.
So then if you subscribe to our YouTube channel,
You
then
get hit by 1 billion podcasts.
Yeah.
yeah.
and then you'll also get our trailers, talks that we put up there.
And we're figuring out how to do time lapse videos too, in a similarly more intelligent fashion than what is currently the time sync time lapse fashion that we do them in.
I mean,
Take a long time.
basically what this amounts to is we've realized that YouTube is actually an incredible platform for reaching people because people
You
are
can search it and stuff.
you can search, you can find things. It recommends videos, and people are already using it.
I mean, everybody's using
Everybody's
it.
on
It still
YouTube.
is the case. I mean, obviously the people listening to this podcast are an exception. It's easy to forget, but almost nobody listens to podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't listen to podcasts
That's
until
true.
we started making this one.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this sounds like a fun thing to do. And then
What are podcasts all
exactly?
about?
What are podcasts? So I started to look into them, and now it's a thing that I do on the regular, right? And most,
I feel like once you're in it, you're in it.
yeah, exactly. I
But-
think it's a thing that once people do it, then they just start doing it. But it just, until then, it sounds so sort of
Weird.
random and weird. Like, why would I watch TV now. I'm a modern person. Like, why would I just listen to people talk about
Modern
stuff?
man. I like images with my audios.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So we're going to give that to you, though.
Yeah.
So that's going to work out fine.
it's going to happen. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. You're going to cry.
Just tears.
Yeah. Because finally you have something to look at.
Also,
while
make sure you
listening to
watch
the
for the
podcast.
first, I think, 25 seconds or something, because the flop rocket comes flying across the sky
Oh, it comes back, though.
in floppy fashion. Yeah, it does every
Yeah,
30
about every 30 seconds, the flop rocket
It's my
goes
favorite part.
goes wiggling across the
very
night
wiggly.
sky.
Does it do it the same way every time, or is it randomized?
It's the same way.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's what we got as far as news relating to podcast and just other random shit. So we got a couple other bullet points. One here. So we got two kind of interesting things I want to talk about.
What? Seth?
So the first one is I've been reading this book called The One Thing. One and like the word one.
Is it just a
but in
sentence?
all caps?
So WON.
Yeah. So O-N-E.
ONE.
Yeah.
That one.
And so the premise of the book is basically talking about how achieving success in any given thing is oftentimes about what you don't do a lot more than what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So they talk about the idea of a focusing question, which is a question that you ask yourself when you're making a decision about next steps. And this particular question is intended to help you sort of cut out the bullshit. cut out all the extra stuff that you don't need to do. And so in the book, they suggest using the question, what is the one thing I can do such that everything else will become easier or redundant? Which I think is a pretty good
starter.
It's a pretty good start. It kind of talks about like this. We want to get our podcast up onto YouTube. What can we do to make that so that we
don't have to actually do
so
it.
we can promote the podcast, but also so we don't have to do it. And the answer is build a robot that does it, right? So we spent a day working on it. Then Adam has some things to finalize.
Probably another day. Fucking
Yep.
YouTube.
But then once it's done, and you never have to worry about it again, right? And so I got up on Sunday morning, and it was one of those weekend days where, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but like you have a lot of things that you definitely need to take care of, right? But you don't need to take care of them that day specifically. Like you could give it a week or two maybe, but you know that if you did all those things, everything else would be much smoother.
So you wake up at the crossroads.
Yeah, when you wake up in the morning, you're laying in bed and you kind of like squinting, staring at the ceiling, and you're just like, shit, because there's like 32 things, you gotta do the laundry, but you could probably wait another day.
Yep.
You gotta like mow the lawn.
But also laundry is highly asynchronous. You just kick it off and then you go do other things.
Yeah, but you still gotta do it.
Yeah, you gotta plan for it. Still.
Yeah. It's still like, there's a decision fatigue, and there's just all kinds of things to take care of. And so I was like, what if I use this focusing question, right? And I was thinking through it, and I was like, well, the problem is these are all chores that are pretty manual in nature. Like I can't like program something to pull my weeds out of the garden.
Well, maybe you can. Have you really thought about it?
I haven't thought about it that hard, but
I bet you could.
But I probably could given enough time and resources.
Yeah.
But as it stands, the weeds need to be pulled, and I got to pull them, right? And so I was using this focusing question idea, but that foundational question that the book offered was not really like hitting it for me.
It's a little breathy,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It doesn't have the punch.
It doesn't actually really feel like much of a focus question.
I like Seth's question
but-
more, especially because the way that he says it in particular.
So we've shifted to another focusing question at work, which is, could we not? Can we just not do this thing? This thing that we're about to do. What if we just didn't?
How could we not?
Yeah.
And I think
That's the new question.
Well, that's been a really good one because the fastest way to get your work done is to figure out that you don't need to do it.
Yeah, which again comes back to the core of the book, right? Which is the things that you don't do are just as important as the things that you do. So that you do. Yeah. So you should always just ask yourself, could we not? Could I just not do this thing? How could I not do this thing? What would happen if I didn't do it? But as far as like my personal thing, I stumbled across a pretty good question, which helped me have easily the most productive Sunday of my fucking life. And I woke up and I was at that crossroads and I was trying to figure out.
You're sitting there, you're like, I could leisure around.
I could just fucking lounge the whole day and then figure out how to resolve all the unresolved problems over the next week, right? And try to like pack in all these things in my evenings or something. I sat there and I was like, because I know that if I did all these things today, I'd be so fucking proud of myself at the end of the day. Like I would sleep like a baby. I would just be so pumped. So instead of making a to-do list, I made a pride list. I was like, everything I check off this list is something to be proud of that I got done today, right? And so I cast myself as, people say like, oh, like you don't want to be like on your deathbed looking back on your life and being filled with regret. So I just kind of like cast myself forward in time into the evening. And I kept thinking back as I was doing stuff about how great it was going to feel in the evening, having had done all these things that I was doing. And man, I tidied up the shit out of the house. I weeded everything. I cut every plant that was loose out in the yard, did dishes, did laundry, scrubbed everything down, organized closets. Holy shit. It was amazing. I was like the Tasmanian devil of cleanliness.
Well, so really it's not even necessarily about pride. It's about how do I make my future self's life easier?
Yeah.
Or
well,
better.
because you have like, I think it was How I Met Your Mother. They have that running joke throughout the show where they go, oh, that's a problem for like future Ted or whatever. Right. But really you should be solving problems for future Ted. You shouldn't be creating problems for future Ted. So anyways,
because those will pile up.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting of like, instead of thinking about what you want to do now, think about what you would like to have had done in the past.
Yeah, so it's also
later.
Similarly, it's not what do I want to do? It's what do I want to have done?
What do I want to have had done?
Well, this is an interesting thing too, because there's a lot of things that I think people generally want to accomplish that require a lot of work to accomplish that you want to, but you still want to have had done that thing. And so there's this hilarious TED talk by this guy it's about procrastination. And he makes this joke at the beginning where he's like, I always wanted to have done a TED talk.
Yeah.
In the past.
But not to do it.
Not to do it, but to have already done it.
Yep.
I think that's the way people tend to look at most things, right? Yeah. Like everybody wants to have climbed Mount Everest. You want to be able to say that you did that, right?
Mm-hmm. In the past.
But actually doing it, like that's hard. But saying that you have done it is that's the easy part.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you do it anyway, because you only get to do something in a moment, right? But then you get to have done that thing until you die.
Whoa. Yeah. Or until you have to do it again. Like
we really do need to start making inspirational posters.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
But so I think, casting yourself forward and saying, what would I liked to have done this weekend?
What would evening Seth like to look back on today and think about having had accomplished, Because morning Seth sucks and doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
But do you make yourself a slave to your future self in this regard?
I think we always are.
You either do that or you make yourself a slave to your past decisions.
Or to your current habits.
Yep.
Sometimes you just want to be a dog, Yeah.
Dogs don't give a fuck.
They don't have anything.
Well, but the point though is that you just get to choose, right? You get to choose either to be anxious about the problems you're piling up in your future, right? Mm-hmm. Or you get to choose to, while choosing to basically just embrace the moment, do whatever the fuck you want, right? Or you can choose to focus. You can choose whichever one you want. The question is just which one is of the most value to you, right? And it seems pretty damn obvious that the thing that's going to be the most valuable in the now as well as in the future, and who gives a fuck about the past? That's already what has happened, right? Is
time to move on.
Future self.
YOLO,
Yeah.
YOLO. Move into the future. It's better over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So anyway, I just want to get that out there. That was interesting. All right. So we have one final news item, which I don't know if it's news, and I also don't remember what it means, and I don't know if it's related to what we were talking about. And it's called simulated annealing.
So the long and short of it is that after the podcast last week, we were so revved up that we kept talking for like 20 minutes.
Actually, I was jazzed, but I think you guys were revved.
I had jazz hands, but I was revved up.
Yeah.
And I was making car noises.
Yeah.
So Adam brought up this concept called simulated annealing, because as we've sort of continued making games and learning about our own process and what works for us as a studio in terms of creatively outputting an ungodly amount of stuff, we've been stumbling across terms that seem like they better describe what it is that we do than other words we've used before. So we used to refer to the way that we design games as basically improv. Improv design is what we refer to it as. But the reality we found out is that it's something called a Hegelian dialectic.
Hegelian dialectic.
Coupled with simulated annealing.
Exactly. So this is what we're getting to. So the Hegelian dialectic is actually
it's really important to have jargon so that you get to feel really good about it.
Well, there's a...
No, but it's true though. It's crystallizing.
Exactly. There's an idea for this, which is that it's easier to control a thing, to think about a thing when you have a word for it.
Yeah.
So the Hegelian dialectic was the first one of these.
Have we talked about Hegelian dialectic on the podcast?
Say it again.
Hegelian dialectic.
So I'll just briefly go into it. So the idea is that in a Hegelian dialectic, it's not.
That is good to say. That
It is good.
It is a type of argument.
It is. It's not. But it's not the same. It's not a debate. Okay. And so the difference
debate's
between
about winning.
A debate is about winning your point, right?
Yeah.
And making the other person concede.
Yes.
More importantly.
In a Hegelian dialectic, everybody who's at the table is actually working in service of something. So in our case, it's like building a good game studio, building the next game. All of us are trying to do that the best. And so what happens is what we do is we come together and we argue about what the best method forward is, but none of us cares about the method that we put forward so much as finding the best method.
Yeah, we're not trying to win. We're not trying to win as individuals. We're trying to win as a team.
We're hopping on a voyage of discovery.
Nobody's arguing on their own behalf. They're arguing on behalf of a third party,
Correct.
Which is the game.
Yeah. And so this allows for, I think, easier detachment from your own ideas, but then also this sort of simulation where you end up getting this third point or fourth point, depending on how many people are talking, where it's a sort of synthesis of all the good stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's how we realize we do actually do our design as well as how we run our studio and stuff.
Hegelian dialectic.
It feels good to say. So, and then
Hegelian
last week,
dialectic.
after the podcast was done, we were chatting, and Adam brought up this concept to describe our overall design process, which is really interesting. And it comes from molecular bio.
Well, it's a physics originally, and it's used really heavily in molecular biology now, and people are trying to understand how proteins fold. Right.
Okay, so take us away.
So are we the proteins?
It's sort of, yeah.
Okay.
But this comes from it's old physics stuff, right? Which is so simulated annealing, or I guess annealing in the physics sense is like, if you can think of it as crystals, right? Which is that as you cool a thing down, it starts to
Anneal.
It starts to become more stable and then form some pattern, right? It anneals. So that's where this idea comes from.
So it starts as chaos.
It starts as pure chaos,
and then it anneals
and becomes less and less chaotic, right? Until you end up at some point. And so this is it's a thermodynamic process, and people in physics have had lots of really nice ways to describe this using equations for some time, right? And so at some point, so this all comes from that same book we talked about last week, which is that algorithms
to live by
book. So they talk about this there, and I actually remember that I used some of this in grad school a little bit. I had forgotten it, and at the time I wasn't thinking of it as a metaphor, a very direct metaphor actually, for just like how to do things in life instead of just how to solve science problems.
It does seem a little far away.
This one's a little further away than the one we talked about last week. But this guy, and I can't remember what problem that he was trying to solve. He's working for like a telephone company, so that's where back when telephone companies were useful. They developed lots of cool tech, and now they just steal money from people. But that's a separate issue. So this guy was trying to solve some problem, and it had to do with, in computer science, there are many problems that there's so many variables involved that there's no solution. You can't solve the thing, right? Or there are many possible solutions and you can't explore the entire space. And so you need to decide how to decide what parts of the space to explore, because
so you're presented with overwhelming possibilities, really.
Effectively infinite.
So you say, I'm not going to solve this problem. I'm going to just come up with a process.
I'm going to come up with a process
that will yield a solution,
but not necessarily the best solution.
Just a solution,
right? And the question is, how do I be confident that I haven't just found a good solution, but I found a quite good solution, right? Knowing that you can never know you've gotten the best solution. And so the big problem here is that if you just choose something and then allow it to sort of vary a little bit as you simulate your problem. So you just change the variables and see what happens, right? As you do that, you can then pick the ones that do best, right? And keep picking the ones that do best and get you towards whatever you're trying to do. But if you do exactly that, then what you end up with is finding they call local maxima or local minima, right? Which is basically just like a pretty good decision that might be not even close to as good as something else, but it's just far away from it. Like you'd have to explore all of your variables
basically
completely different.
For what it is, it's pretty good.
Yeah, but all of your variables have to be basically completely different to find the much better solution.
Right. So this is like the idea.
So you can't get there
of us launching simultaneously across all three platforms without knowing, but having thought about it a bunch. Because we always say we have no idea. We could have gone much better.
Yeah.
If we did it some other way, but it certainly was good enough.
You just have to make a choice, right? And so we're given whatever variables have at hand. So the question is, how do you get, if you're exploring a space of solutions, right? How do you do it in a way that allows you to get an answer so you can stop, because you have infinite possible answers, right? So you have to be able to stop. How do you do it with the confidence that you're not trapped in this local maximum forever because it's too far away from something else? And the answer is you start from as many different points as you can with completely different selections of variables and stuff. And then you allow those things to vary quite a bit as you start working towards your solution, right? So as you pick the better ones, you sometimes pick worse ones, you sometimes pick better ones. You allow that range of the things that you're choosing to be really wide.
Just be open to a lot of possibilities.
And then as you start sort of, climbing up these hills, getting toward these maximum, you start to let the variation get smaller and smaller.
So you could say it's crystallizing.
It's crystallizing, exactly. So you're turning that's exactly what it is. So you're turning the temperature down, right? Because temperature is just chaos, right? That's just actually what it is. It's just molecules banging into each other really fast. So the idea with annealing is exactly the same. So you start with chaos and then you cool it down until you end up with a place where it is no longer chaos.
So interestingly, is this not a similar sort of thing as the Hegelian dialectic offers?
Well, but Hegelian dialectic is not actually, it doesn't describe how to take the approach. It describes basically an attitude towards it, right?
Correct.
Simulated
the
annealing
is the same.
is if you couple those together, then that's actually what we do, right?
So the annealing is basically us saying we want to try. We have this idea of what's going to improve the game or make the game more like this thing,
And then we throw chaos on it.
So then, so we throw that into this. We throw that into the
brainstorm
game.
about it.
Yeah, we brainstorm about it for a while. We come up with, and we allow just all ideas, and we kind of argue the points using the Hegelian dialectic. Figure out what we think might be a local maxima of that idea. Right.
Then we always ask, like, well, what if, and then we throw something in there, right? Throw a wrench in and just ask, okay, what if we just removed a variable, just change something entirely? Where do we end up now? Right.
Or that question, could we not?
Or could we not do this?
So we continue to throw this chaos on it. And then as we coupled with Hegelian dialectic, which is what we use to make our decisions, right? Then as we move forward, then we start to, the idea of what we want starts to come into place, which means we need less variation now. Because now once we have like an idea that we like, we don't want to just completely change it again, right? And this becomes particularly important once you start to develop a game, because at the beginning point, it's pure chaos for us, right? Because we develop it.
We don't design it.
Fashion. It's not designed.
We just live in the chaos. Right. We live in the heat.
Right. But you have basically there's less room for chaos as time goes on, because now the cost starts getting too high, right? And so the idea is you start with as much chaos as you can stand, and then are constantly working towards reducing the chaos, but you're not trying to get rid of it, because you never actually do. You don't get to a point where you're like full crystal and nothing ever moves again, right? You just continue to allow small amounts of chaos that just get smaller and smaller as you go.
Interesting.
So
that's the idea.
So I want to, everybody keep this in your brain, in your brain tubes, because our first two questions are actually, I think, relevant to this.
Okay.
So I'm just going to throw these in. I'm going to throw these in the mix.
Mix them in.
And so these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. You can ask them with your Bscotch ID. So come on over and throw the questions in the mix. All right. So first question, it comes from Alan Falcon. Would you rather release one game every 4 years that sells 1 million copies, or one game every 3 months that each sells 75,000 copies?
So the total's the same.
No, the one game every 3 months yields 1.2 million copies. So obviously that's a better financial move, but we'll get to that. All right. And then the other sort of partner question comes from Kulabula, who says, I read that it took you guys 2 years to make Crashlands. Which would have made you more money? Crashlands or 6 additional free-to-play games, 4 months dev on each game, with similar quality to Quadrupus Rampage. So both of these questions, I'm going to kind of boil them down to the idea of, given what we just talked about, of sort of like starting with chaos and then allowing things to crystallize and whatever, is it better to make a bunch of small games or to work on one huge game? Because what we found with Crashlands was we started with chaos, and actually it's probably the first year of the 2 years was basically us just exploring the concept.
And didn't cool it down at all.
No, we just kept throwing chaos into there. And the game systems didn't crystallize in any kind of a meaningful way until about a year in. And then once we were there, then it was just kind of pumping content into the same.
And then, as we talked about before, when Adam came on, and there suddenly was a huge injection of chaos.
New source of chaos.
Yep. And then once we after, I think after a year and a half, we started working on the story, which was another injection of chaos, right? But for us, that was still a much more stable project than the stuff we'd worked on in the past, because our previous games had been 3-month projects. And for example, with Quadrupus Rampage, we added Pete, the point of the game, the boss, like 2 weeks before launch, right? Yeah. And so
there wasn't really it never actually crystallized, right? It was just chaos, and then we launched it.
It's just chaos, and then it sort of like slightly cooled, and then we threw it out there.
It's like a Bane versus Batman situation,
right.
We were born in it.
Yeah. And so I think there's an interesting question here, because I think it really depends on where you are, because I think you learn a lot by being in the heat. Being in the
that's
chaos.
Where all of learning is,
right.
Actually.
Yeah, because once you've crystallized your game idea, then it's work. Then you're like, well, we know we need like 39 enemies, we need 128.
We know what all the rules are.
Helmets, and you just go. And then because every game idea has a certain content threshold that it needs to hit for it to be a marketable concept for people to be willing to spend money on it, right? And so if your goal is to learn a lot as fast as possible, like let's say you're early in your studio life or whatever, then I would not advocate whatsoever for spending 2 or 4 years on a game project.
Yeah, because you got to learn.
Yeah. And then honestly, the only reason we worked on Crashlands is because of other sort of extraneous circumstances, we'll say. Our plan was to just keep making games every 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, this lost cycling was a quarter done.
We're 2.5 weeks in, and
Yeah, we would have been done with that in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Easy.
So I think it really kind of depends. And I think where we are right now, our intent is to probably continue working on games that take at least maybe a year to make.
6 months a year.
But we may occasionally sprinkle in some small, mini projects or whatever, just to keep things fresh.
Yeah.
Because again, you do,
especially once we get to the part where the big project has cooled down, right? Because now it just starts to become less fun and less educational.
well, you're not learning as much.
You're not
yet.
learning stuff.
And I mean, just as an example, with the current project we're working on, we have this new suite of animation systems that make it really easy to make much more elaborate, super cool skeletal animations. And that system came out of a 3-day game jam that we did internally inside the studio, where we wanted to get a bunch of characters in there. And I thought, I'll just take, 8 hours and just come up with this entirely new system so I don't have to do all this stuff by hand, right? And then all of a sudden, I had that jam to kind of refine the system. And once it was done, then I brought that system over into the new game. And now all of a sudden we have this thing, right? And so I think breaking away from these bigger projects and doing these smaller things where you're free to just inject chaos into it.
You want to stay hot.
Yeah.
you know?
And just completely change everything.
But things that are hot are generally not suitable for other people to consume. It'll burn their tongue.
Yeah. And burn them.
You know?
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you got to cool them down. But if it's too cold, it'll also burn their tongue. So you got to
You
cool
gotta
it down.
room temperature.
You got to
is
get to room
ideal.
temperature.
Yeah.
And that's when you launch the thing. Right?
So I guess the answer is it depends. And working on a game long term has its benefits. Working on a game in the short term has different benefits.
Although I took this in a different direction when I listened to this question, which is in particular Alan Falcon's question about if we had 6 successive games that all had 75,000 players, whatever. To me, that would mean we fucked up.
Oh yeah,
Because we should have gotten more players every time.
That's
Also-
I was also reading that. I was like,
Also,
75,000
the
each.
amount of portfolio backlog work we'd have to do.
Yeah.
just to maintain all those.
Actually, you're
Huge.
wrong, Adam. You're wrong.
Why?
Because if after 4 years,
Mhm.
each of our games that we launched has sold 75,000 copies, that means that
Didn't you say free to play?
no, Alan's question was
okay.
about selling the games. So he said one game for 4 years that sells 1 million copies, or a game every 3 months that each sells 75,000 copies.
Sure.
But if after 4 years, if every game has sold 75,000 copies, then that means the ones at the
Right.
beginning, they've just had a longer tail, So really the most
I
recent
got
ones
you.
have done better,
True.
but just very slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Math. All right.
But I would still, though, even though that is true,
Yeah.
I acquiesce.
That still is not
It is
good
still
enough.
true. It's still not sufficient
Yeah.
growth
Yeah.
for what I would say. Because I mean, our main goal is to make it so that every game that we make is far more successful than the last one.
Mhm.
And to us, I think that truly does mean either we'd make lots of small games to roll the dice, or we can make big elaborate games that get people really excited so that they want to play them and tell their people about them and so on. And so it doesn't become a dice roll anymore. It just becomes an accumulation of
Becomes,
people
hey,
who are
this
pumped about what
game
we're
is
doing.
good and we're going to buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So next question comes from Racing for the Finish, who says,
Hmm.
Irmagarish. That's
Mm.
what he started with.
Humans.
Irmagarish. The Great British Bake Off is splendid.
Oh yeah.
What makes it so entertaining when other baking shows that are more action oriented are mind numbing after a few episodes?
Or even, I mean, I haven't watched this one, so I won't answer the question, but I would just say, would also say, or even really just horrifying. Because
Yeah.
most cooking shows, I get actually just physically agitated watching them because the people are so terrible.
Yeah.
on
So
that
okay,
shit.
so this question came about because Sam started baking bread a few episodes ago.
Also, I did on Sunday. I made my 6th loaf, which was my signature bake, to move me on to crackers, which I'm working on next. I passed the test. I did burn the bottom of it a little bit, but it was a huge loaf of bread. So Diana gave
what
me a
made it
pass.
your signature test exactly? Was
It
it was
was
a
sort of
personal
like-
decision, or
He
Yeah.
signed
So
it.
I asked. I told Diana, I was like, I want to do a signature bake, and then I'm going to move on to
What does
crackers.
that mean?
Oh, is this a phrase from the show or
It's a
something?
phrase from the show.
Okay,
So
that's
one,
what I
one of the
wrote that
challenges each week is a signature bake. Where they
Okay.
they come up with their own design for things. So I made this huge, just rotund loaf, and then decorated, cut out bread pieces and decorated the top of it with flour bits, so it looked like flowers, made out of bread. Put that sucker in the oven, cooked it, turned out fantastic. So Diana said I passed, so I get to move on to crackers now.
Oh, so Diana's
That's making
your gatekeeper.
Yeah, she's the judge. She's the judge.
Signature.
Does she ever just like eat your bread and then just shake her head and be like, "This is the worst"?
No, but she
bread
does.
I've ever-"
She does
Take your
say,
knives and go home.
yeah, she does say it's a good bake, which is one of the phrases from the show.
Ah.
So, but yeah, so I think the reason it's so pleasant is because you get to focus on what the people are actually doing.
Because it
instead
turns
of-
out it's interesting.
It turns out it's interesting to watch someone bake and have them explain what the hell is happening, as opposed to usually what happens in all the other kitchen shows is it's actually about how terrified people are or about the drama. So any cutaway shot in the American television shows and like Top Chef, they're asking,
Trying to get people to talk shit about each
yeah,
other.
you're talking shit
And
about
then you
your.
always get that classic line, "I'm not here to make friends."
Yep, there's always someone who does that who
Yep.
gets kicked off early because it's not a good strategy.
Because they're not here to make friends. You
So
should be making friends everywhere.
I think that's what it's about. Is that it actually has the proper focus.
Is it because people don't win anything?
Yeah, there's no winning.
Because there's awards and all that. There's like a huge awards, like hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Which then means that people are not like loss means a lot,
Correct.
right? And it can actually change someone's life.
Yeah, I think
completely.
in the case of the Great British Bake Show, people are always winning, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how they feel, and you feel that constantly as
Right.
they do.
So you know
it's
what
just
this, you know what this
enjoyable.
reminds me of? This reminds me, there was an attempt to turn a game jam into a reality show. This happened
Oh yeah.
a few years ago, and it was, I don't remember who was the production company, but I know it was sponsored by Mountain Dew.
Yep.
And then there was some other shit.
There's a breakdown of it on Gama Sutra. Somewhere.
Yeah,
We've
there's
talked
a
about it
Gama
before.
Sutra article about it, and has basically amounted to, so game jams are, and also the independent game development community are notorious for being incredibly supportive, friendly environments,
Mhm.
right? And so some genius at some production company was like, we're gonna do with game jams what we've been doing with like cooking or all these other activities where we pit people against each other, ramp up the drama and then like put them at each other's throats and then televise the results. And so they got a bunch of fairly decently known independent game developers, brought them all together, broke them off into teams, and tried to motivate them with various prizes and things like that, and then tried to stir up drama. And I think after the first,
It was a good day.
by the end of the first day, every single one of the contestants or whatever, they just left. They just fucking walked out. They're just like, they're like, we know we signed a contract, but we don't give a shit.
Yeah, but
Sue
I
us.
think this is the interesting thing, because I think if you actually followed a game jam in the same sort of way,
yeah, like
they
what they're
followed the
doing
Great
is
British Bake Show,
interesting.
be super
You
interesting.
don't need people to stab each other.
Yeah,
to have an interesting
crazy.
show.
Well, yeah, I think it's that departure from caring about like expertise and knowledge about things. Like think about what the Discovery Channel used to be
right.
versus what it is now.
Yeah.
It sort of perfectly encapsulates this, right? It used to be about people doing actually amazing things, or just about amazing things that have happened, or about how the world works, and digging into the details of this stuff because it's really interesting and really compelling. And it is slowly over time turned into just people making things up or being at each other's throats for really inane fucking reasons, right? And that's now that's everything is exactly that same way.
Well, it's kind of insulting too, because that means there's an assumption on the part of the producers that the thing that the people are doing is not interesting.
Yeah.
Like it's not worth watching, right?
Right.
Instead, the only thing worth watching is just
Squabble.
people being dicks, right?
Right.
This is also sad about that show, Naked and Afraid.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you get these expert survivalists, you strip them of everything, including their clothes, and you throw them into this really hostile environment. And they have to survive for 41 days or something.
Yeah.
Which the types of things that they would have to do and figure out in order to survive is crazy. Like
That's
it's
an interesting point, because they
super
never,
interesting.
whenever they talk to them, they never ask them about, or they never have them explain like what they're doing
Yeah,
exactly.
they show some of it.
They
but
show it,
don't,
but
yeah.
they're not like, walk us through why you
Yeah.
would do this over whatever other methods.
They'll only have people talk
interesting.
about what they're doing if it's in the context of them complaining about how that also relates to how they're pissed off at another person, right?
right.
So like,
Does Bear Grylls still have his show where he was just by himself doing stuff?
Probably.
Because that was pretty good. But that was all about he just had to, because there was nothing else to happen.
was that the
to
show
do,
that
right?
like that spawned the running joke of like drinking your own
Drinking your own
piss?
Probably. Yeah, he did all kinds of other stuff.
All right.
Cool.
So next question comes from Peace and Bullets.
Mm.
Peace and Bullets says, I would like to subscribe to the Butterscotch Shenanigans Book Club. Where can I find out what you all are reading?
Question is, how many books a month can you read?
Yeah, because there's 3 of us.
And we all read different books.
And a lot of
And
them.
Sam reads really fast. I read it normally.
Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wonder if Sam even reads. Sam has this thing where like, so Sam
He just takes books home and then reads Cliff Notes and then comes back and talks
Yeah.
about them.
That's right.
yeah.
That's what I've secretly been doing all
like,
these years.
Here's how Sam exists. I feel like he's like a temporal, like a time lord. So. So just yesterday, Sure and I are like, we're gonna go to the gym. And Sam's like, I'm gonna go to the gym. And like I'm changing to get ready to go to the gym. And Sam was like, hey, I'm just gonna get a head start. I'm gonna run over there real quick and get started. I'll just see you over there. I'm like, all right. So like 5 minutes later, Sure and I get in the car. We head over to the gym, and Sam is reading a magazine. He's all sweaty. Like he's reading a magazine, and he just looks up and he's like, oh, hey guys. And we're like, all right, let's get going. And Sam's like, no, I already did it. I already did it all. I'm like, what the fuck? How did you do
Yeah, man.
What did you do? Like 4 different
I did
workouts?
7 different.
Seven
Eight,
different.
8. Sure, yeah. I went a little extra. Usually aim for 6, but yeah. It was 8.
Yeah. Or whenever Sam goes to run on a treadmill, he just goes on the treadmill, turns it up to as fast as he can physically run. And then just does, and then just does that until his legs give out, and then hits the stop button, and then
very efficient.
goes home. Right. So it's like 4 minutes of just sprinting.
If you're going to do a thing, you should do it.
Yeah. So similarly, reading a book, Sam's like, I'm going to read a book. And then he just picks it up. And like 8 minutes later, he's like, so here's what I learned.
But I think part of the problem is that people make such a big deal about this stuff, right? They make such a big deal about the effort in going to the gym and how long it's going to take and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which is one of the things that keeps people, it's one of the things that keeps me from doing it. Right.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I embrace Sam's style of just like,
Like you just go.
you just go, do it and leave. And then just
I started doing that
this
this past week too. It's great. I used to I was tracking all of my numbers and stuff and like monitoring my progress. I'm like, what if I just fucking went there?
Could I not?
And just like, because the other problem is like you go to the gym, you're waiting for machines, right?
Yep.
But that's only if you have a preset workout.
Correct.
Because then,
Otherwise you just
there
go
are
to
certain
whatever's
machines you have to use. If you
Embrace
just
the chaos.
If you just go in there and you just simulated anneal your way through the gym, you're like, fuck it. Like, there's a bench press machine open. I'm gonna do
leg
that. Like,
bicep day.
I guess
Today is big toe day. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Exercise something. Yeah.
all the machines are taken. I'm just gonna do jumping jacks for 45 minutes.
There's a similar idea, which I think is actually more useful in everyday life because it's less elaborate and confusing than simulated annealing, which is just constraint relaxation, which is the same idea.
Oh,
where
yeah.
You've got too many, because one of the reasons that you can't solve a lot of problems is because there are too many variables, too many constraints on that problem, right? And so you can just ask the question. So take like the traveling salesman problem, which is not solvable, right?
I don't know what that is.
It's the one where a salesman has like whatever, some number of 10 towns that he needs to go to. But the question is, what is the route? What is the shortest possible route that allows him to visit every one of those cities exactly one time? It's actually an unsolved computer. When you take it to end, right? It's an unsolved problem. But
So like if there's any arbitrary number of towns, you mean?
right.
Okay.
So you could never prove that you have found the optimal solution, for example, right? But you can use constraint relaxation, which is basically to say, what if we said he could visit it more than once?
Yeah. You say, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. You could say, what if we're allowed to visit more than once? Then all of a sudden it actually becomes a solvable problem.
Or
right?
what if you just measured the success of this by how much stuff he sold because
Right.
he's a salesman?
We're going to skip these shitty towns.
So, but the key though is that if you still want that other solution with all the constraints there, right? The idea is you first relax your constraints, you first remove some constraints, and then solve the problem, and then you put the constraint back, starting from there.
This
And
is
then
kind of
ask-
like
and
the
then
other
ask,
day.
now what do we do?
It's like the other day, Sam going to the gym with boots on because he forgot his shoes somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I guess this isn't a problem. I do have boots. I'm just going to wear gym shorts and boots.
I look like a maniac, but I don't give a fuck because I was at the gym. Then I was done in 20 minutes. In and out.
Exercise to do.
And plus, you had a little bit of extra weight on your legs, so you got a little
Yeah,
bit
I'm
more
sure a little more
workout
gains.
Yeah.
walking around.
But yeah, whenever you find yourself though with a problem that you just can't fucking figure out how to solve, just relax. Just relax. a
Well,
little
speaking
bit.
of books,
Take away
this
some of the
kind of
problems.
reminds me of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's really what it's about.
Well, it's interesting,
that's what
because
it's all about.
you know, Oprah had a book list. Maybe we should have a book club.
Would that sort of elevate us to Oprah status?
It
I
seems
feel
like
that
it.
must be the one thing.
That's why she's famous, right?
Yeah, because of her book club.
She's got a book club.
I don't think it went the other way.
No,
Pretty
I don't
sure.
think so, not at all.
Yeah, no, she was basically a nobody. And
then
she's
she had
like,
a
what
book
if
club.
I just had a book club?
So the only way we'd be able to do a book club is if
I would rather just put up a reading list.
Yeah, that's probably a better.
A book club sounds like a lot of work. Can we just not do that part?
Yeah, because then we have to plan it as opposed to just retroactively do it.
No, we can just say, here's what we are reading or have read.
But then if we keep it up to date though, so we focus on what we are reading, then we may talk about some of that in the podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Because we do anyway.
And it would
So
basically
people have a
be,
little bit of a heads
it
up.
basically be we could have a page on the, because we have on our website, we have our little education and talk section. We could have a,
Wait, there's a little tiny, isn't there a little book?
It is not well maintained.
I think there's
but
just two
yes.
books.
yeah. So what we really
Like on
need
the
is we need not just a list of books, but also with a very brief blurb about why we read it, what we gained from it, whether we recommend it.
I do take notes and everything. I think I've already
I
read.
suppose we shouldn't put something on the list that we don't recommend.
No,
definitely
that would be.
That's,
Then we just be a review site.
Yeah. Read this book. It's bad. Don't read it.
Yeah, we just wasted your time telling you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. We could put together, well, not necessarily a book club, at least at this point, but
We can
book
call it
list.
whatever we want and just put in whatever work we think is
Maybe just like a
appropriate.
book, like board with a nail in it.
a scatter book club.
Yeah.
It's like Scatter Jam.
Yeah.
We're relax the constraints. We can still have a book club.
All right, we'll figure that out. We'll put Monique on it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question comes from Sushi Banjo, which sounds kind of like wet and not well tuned.
That's a good name.
All right. Sushi Banjo says, "Hey guys, I've been hearing some talk of a new title you're working on. How do you determine who will be beta testers for the wonderful games you craft?"
So we used to just do it by whoever would pay attention to us, but nowadays,
Now,
You mean starting with Crashlands?
yeah, starting with Crashlands, we evolved the concept to be basically what we do is we look at everybody's Butterscotch IDs. We have an open application period. I think with Crashlands, we had 1,100 people apply.
So we take applications.
And the idea is that we want people who can give a suitable amount of time. We don't like showing our games to a lot of people early because they're always worse than they will be later, which of course is the point of beta. So we show them to as minimal people as possible. And with Crashlands, we ended up selecting, I think, 170 people.
well, first we did an alpha with 30 people.
Yeah, that was really close.
that was basically the people who are active in our forums. at
Yeah,
the
those
time.
are community members who were really close. And then with the open application, it went from about 1,100 people down to 170, of which I think 110 or so ended up kind of like really, really participating.
Pretty a lot, yeah.
But the way we selected those was actually just through BSID metrics. So you both had to apply, as in I think you just kind of threw your name in the hat, and because we don't want to read anything, so you throw your name in the hat. And then what we did is we looked through all the BSID metrics. So do you actually play our games? Are you a member of the forum? Have you talked to people? Have you asked a podcast question? I guess.
So we just want to know engagement.
Yeah,
Because that also indicates that you have the time to be a beta
Well, and
tester.
that you
The
care
interest.
about what we're doing and are interested in contributing.
right,
in
because
some way.
beta testers are a special breed of people where
Yeah.
they care. They have to care more about what's going to happen than what the current slate of garbage is being put in front of them. So
They're pumped about what they will have done.
And of course,
Yes.
all we can offer is their name in the credits.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all we got.
that's all we
You know,
got.
So that's all we have in exchange. So
So there's your answer.
yeah. And of course, we'll have info up about what this means. But if you want to up your chances, get engaged. I mean, this is good. You got a podcast question now. That's going to give
That
you
was
some
worth
points.
a lot of points.
That was
yeah.
a lot of points. Yeah.
But yeah, we just assigned points to all this stuff and then just ranked all the applicants and then we just took, we knew how many we needed, right? Because we were trying to test a certain number of devices. And so we also had people supply like what kind of devices they owned, right? So we needed to make sure we had,
Get a good
like
cross section.
50 people on each kind of device and just get good cross sections.
Like, do you have a joystick? Are you on a Linux machine with an Oculus? Do you have a steering wheel? All that
Do
kind
you
of
have to
stuff.
play in a helicopter flying upside down?
Yep.
Yeah. Just any.
So we're just we need to kind of cover the normal spectrum
Yeah,
of
the
player
normal range.
experiences. So all right, next question comes from Space Bat.
coast to coast.
Space Bat says, "Do you guys use notebooks to record your ideas? If so, do you have a preferred brand or style? If not, how do you keep track of ideas?"
I used to get fancy notebooks like Moleskines.
Yeah. Fuck it.
Fuck
Don't.
that.
And
I get legal
I
pads.
mean, if you want to,
Ideas are garbage. They should be written into garbage.
Yes, and then throw in the trash.
And
And
throw in
Monique
the
was actually
trash.
making fun of me because when we were flying back from GDC, I wrote, I think, 9 pages on the plane coming back, where it was just kind of organizing thoughts and getting stuff ready.
you came home and threw it away.
Well, no, as I finished one, I'd usually take it out and move the important things onto the next one and keep sort of working on organizing and then just throw it away. And so by the end of the plane ride, which was like a 2.5 hour plane ride, I just had this pile of legal pad papers sitting on my desk. And then
trash.
we got home. Monique ordered me a bunch more of them because she's wonderful. So,
Nice.
My suggestion is actually legal pad because I think it reinforces this idea that like you need to just be cranking out thought.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about how pretty it is. You don't need to worry about.
And you never need to revisit it, probably.
You never need to revisit. That's the important thing.
You will not revisit it.
So we've been doing the morning pages concept from the Artist's Way. So and with the morning pages, all you do is you wake up, fill 2 or 3 pages, or even just one with literally just brain dump.
Notebooks
on the
are for
page.
thinking, not for archiving.
Yes. And so you do that and pair it with a legal pad, which is inherently kind of ugly.
Yeah.
They're yellow.
They're
They got
horrible.
lines across them.
But they are real tall, which feels like extra good.
It's great. And you can fit so much stuff on
Even
one page.
better is if you
Fantastic.
use a pen that bleeds through. That way, after the first page, then all of your pages not only are on ugly paper, but you can barely fucking read it anyways.
Because
Yeah.
you don't need to read it. It's the process that's important.
It helps
So-
you understand why you're doing it.
So yeah, so usually what happens for me is I have my legal pad, I write a bunch of crap on it, and then sort of star the important stuff. And then if it's things I need to do, then as I'm writing, like a little sort of list appears in the top right corner of it. That's sort of things that I'm going to take care of this later. And then I just take that. So I might write like 3 pages and just get 2 little bullet
and
points.
put that into an archival
And I
system.
put that into workflowy.
Yep.
Done. That's it.
Those are to-do items. The rest is just garbage. 'Cause, yeah, I mean, most of what you're right. But I think this is actually a really important question because I know a lot of people who kind of obsess about the quality of their pens and their notebooks and that kind of stuff, right?
I mean, give me a Bic and a Post-it.
Yeah, yeah, that's sufficient, right? Because these are
Bic.
these are mechanisms for they're mechanisms for thinking, right? But this is like an obsession with tools. It's one of the ways that people use to sort of basically ask for permission to do something, right?
Yeah.
Because here they're basically saying, if I had the right tool, then I'd
Again,
be ready.
If
right?
only I had the right shoes, I could go to the gym.
Exactly right.
Nah, man, I got
doesn't
boots.
matter. Yeah, if you need to move yourself away from any kind of tool dependence at all, minimize it. So if you can say like, if it might be true that you need a writing utensil of some form and something to write on of some
Man, you
form.
got blood.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
All you need is something sharp.
You need something sharp.
And a wall.
Or you
Even
got
then,
teeth.
you got
could
teeth.
just you're fine.
Go for it.
You got blood in the wall. You're set. That's all you need. But really though, that is true, right? As long as you know what the bare bones mechanism is, because remember why are you doing it, right? Like they always ask the question of why. Like no, you're not filling up a notebook so that you have all of your amazing ideas to go back and look at. No, because they're all garbage. They're literal garbage.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing that because that's how you think. That's how you crystallize ideas that then just live inside of you, right?
Anneal them.
You change your
Yeah.
brain every time you write something down. You have a thought which changes your brain, which makes future thoughts better.
When also, I think importantly, just because you have an idea in your head doesn't mean you've actually thought it through.
No.
Right? Like taking the time to write it out and talking your way through all of the problems, like just being able to see it out there forces you to actually confront all the problems with the idea.
Yeah.
Right. And usually what happens is you're like, oh, never mind. That's dumb. I'm not going to do that.
Or even if you do crystallize it into something good, that crystallize those bullet points that you end up with on the other end of your 3 pages of writing, right? That's what you care about. So the practice should be is how do I just embrace that I'm writing garbage, that within it, I'm going to find something
Diamonds
of
in the
value.
rough.
Your diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
And then what system am I going to use to handle those? And in this case, it should be, those are things you need to do, or those are things that you need to handle in some other fashion, right? It's very rare that if there's an idea that is worth your time, that is valuable, that you should come back to at some later date, that there should be a fucking archive of all of your spectacular ideas that you just keep on building, right? Because like, quit it. Just go take one of those and go do it, right?
That being said, I do have, so my preferred method is I do have a little tiny little journal book thing in my back pocket. I don't think it's a Moleskine, but it's like a shitty version of Moleskine now because I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I got a knockoff red one, but actually has survived. I used to get moleskins, but this thing survives way better than my moleskins.
Yeah.
did.
So
Both no moles had to die.
Yeah.
So it's but
so I do have that just for when I'm running around. Pen in the pocket always.
Yep. Always a pen in the pocket.
Workflowy on my device. So
What kind of pens do you use?
Doesn't fucking matter.
Exactly.
this is like the everyday carry, right? You need pens,
Yep.
you need a notebook, and a knife.
Yep.
Yep.
In case you don't have a pen and notebook and you write with blood.
Yeah.
So
You gotta be ready.
it's just those, but I do find I do think it's an important point. The legal pad, the extra size.
Oh, it helps. It's
For
great.
some reason, it's really good. Like if you get a big idea, throw down. Exercise helps.
I actually hate writing in my tiny little.
Yep.
I feel like it's useful for one thing only for me, which is writing a quick to-do list of
Yeah.
things to kind of burn through.
Or like writing the
I got
dimensions of
shit. I got to
things.
remember to get eggs.
Right.
Eggs. There,
But that's
that
only
filled
if
up the
you're-
whole page.
Right. But it's only if you're on your way to get eggs right now, because otherwise it's not where your to-do list is supposed to be. Right. There should
Yeah.
be some other system for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I use it when I'm about to leave. I need to jot down dimensions of things I need to buy. Like my space is this big. I need a rug for there or whatever. Right. Or I have some ideas and I'm trapped some horrible place without a legal pad. Then I'll, make some quick notes, but not to review.
No, yeah.
Never to review.
No.
Yeah.
It's a temporary mechanism.
Mhm.
All right, so let's do one quick last one, which comes from Mitron. Mitron says,
Mitt Ronnie.
when not feeding from your podcast listeners' souls, what's lunch break like at Butterscotch HQ?
Oh, that's usually sufficient.
Do you plow through the lunch hour eating sandwiches at your desk, or is there a Butterscotch canteen upstairs for a bite and a chit chat?
It's kind of both. You just do whatever you want. I don't care.
That's what the fuck they want.
Yeah. So
Except for Adam, who just eats sweet tarts.
Smarties.
Smarts.
So
Sweet tarts are
the way
horrible.
lunch works.
Sorry.
Usually sometime between 11 and 1, if you want, then you get up and go get lunch. Whatever that means. If you're like, hey, I'm going to eat lunch in the conference room. If anybody wants to join me, by the conference room, I mean the room on the other side of the staircase.
Yeah.
Or
4 feet away from where you previously were.
I oftentimes will just take mine upstairs because there's a table that's like chest
Well,
high.
I think
opposed to-
the core question to get at here though is it like working at your desk and continuing to like plow through, like not have a lunch break, but just like,
Mhm.
continuing to work through the entire 8-hour day. Is that something we do?
Yeah.
Not if you want.
I do it.
Well, the whole point is if you want.
If you want, yeah. Well,
I don't give a
but I
crap.
guess it's all about taking strategic. For me, it's all about strategic time use, right?
Yes.
So if I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat something, no matter when that happens, because that's if I don't eat when I'm hungry, then I'm thinking about being hungry, which impacts my ability to do awesome work, right?
Yeah,
Right.
the idea of a time boxed lunch break, like it's always going to happen at noon, for example. I don't have
What is this,
my
like a assembly line?
Yeah, my appetite is random.
Yeah, it
so
just does what it does.
sometimes I've eaten lunch, even my entire lunch by 10 a.m. sometimes.
And then at noon, you're like, fuck, I'm hungry.
Yeah, then I go to the grocery store, get more food, come back, hang out with everybody.
You got to do you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. So that's the rule in the studio is it's not about, there's no particular way to do it. It's just figure out what works best for you on any given day. Do that thing.
Yeah. Well, and our goals for the studio are basically how do we make it so that everybody gets to feel like they can make the most effective use of their time, while also minimizing the chaos that it causes to other people, right? So when it comes to things like lunch breaks and that kind of stuff, if people are going to work on something together, then they tend to go take a lunch break together because then they can continue thinking about ideas and stuff. If someone's just kind of working solo, then they just take a random lunch break whenever the fuck they want. Don't bug anybody about it unless that person's also on a break, right? And so on.
I think another
You gotta
good
balance
move
both of those.
is to eat your lunch on someone else's desk, while they're working.
Right.
Yeah.
That way you can help them get their work done
Mm-hmm.
Chomping in their ear.
by slapping noodles against their cheeks.
Well, I think we also people, I think one of the things that happens is you just say, hey, I'm going to go eat lunch or I'm going to go for a walk. And then people will just volunteer.
Yeah. If other people are kind of ready for a break at that time, then
Like, cool. Can I come? You're like, no, I need to be by myself.
fuck you, buddy.
Yeah.
Go walk somewhere else.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
space isn't big enough for the two of us.
Yeah. So you just
The entire outdoors.
The whole outdoors.
do whatever you want, but it does require a degree. You have to think about it again. It's the same. It's always the rule around here, which is just why are you doing that?
Yeah, the assumption here is that you're not trying to escape work. And as long as you're not trying to escape work, then
Okay.
do whatever the fuck you need to do.
Yep.
you know?
Yeah, so we don't have lunch breaks. We also don't have vacation days or sick days. Just you do you.
Yeah, if you're sick, then you're sick. If you need to go on vacation, you need to
Do
go on
that.
vacation.
If you
need to
don't want to
eat-
be here, then go away.
Yeah,
what
then,
are you doing?
then
Yeah.
don't be here
Yeah.
ever again. That's
That's the rule.
that's the rule. It's very simple, really.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Man.
All right, so that's all we got for this week. So again, keep an eye out. Hopefully in the next week we'll have some updates about this YouTube and itch.io stuff.
I think I think this weekend I'm gonna try to finish off this fucking YouTube automatic robot uploader.
Nice. So sometime, hopefully in the next week, if not within the next year, something like that.
Yeah.
Who
Something like that.
knows?
So just-
Soon TM.
So keep your
as our mods
corneas
say.
peeled and your eyes lasered because it's coming.
Yeah, get
All right.
Lasix. But
And also,
good for you.
thank you to Monique for putting our podcast stuff together and Fat Bard for being a producer.
I feel
Yeah.
like Monique might also be a producer in this context.
What is it? What are we?
She's like a director.
Maybe a director.
director?
What are we?
we're the talent. Is that the word they use?
Yeah.
The talent. Oh god, it makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
We're the thought leaders.
We're a think tank.
We're a think tank. What are the horrible?
More like a dank tank. Am I right? Yeah. All right. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.